episode. Okay, I am so excited to kick off Goddess of Gains. It's been a year since we've done this cohort. Honestly, I probably should just run this year round because I think most women would benefit by starting here. And most of our one-on-one clients, if they are like committed to seeing results and open to trusting us as coaches, this is where we will start them 10 out of 10 times. Sometimes, oftentimes we have clients that come in feeling really desperate for fat loss. And so as coaches, like I never want to force a plan on someone. So we may start them in a fat loss phase and be conservative and help them kind of build in habits as we go so that they can optimize. But really, truly, most women, no matter what your goals are, should start with all the things that we're going to be highlighting and talking about in Goddess of Gains. And this isn't about like bulking up or being in a big calorie surplus. This is about getting your body into a safe space, safe place from hormone status to recovery, to fueling properly and with getting enough nutrients and protein and calories so that you can really thrive. And that sets you up to push your workouts really hard and make lean gains in the gym, which is what we're really focused on in this group. We're focused on building muscle, on recomp, but also sets you up to where your body is in a safe space, safe place to where you could pursue fat loss and be really successful. And sorry, my throat, I'm getting over a cold. Be very successful with fat loss, entering it at like the most optimal place. So, if fat loss is a goal of yours, that's okay. I think this cohort will set you up really well for doing that future. Or if you're wanting to recomp, and not just like really prioritize building muscle only, we'll kind of talk about the nuance with that too. And if you maybe didn't add that nuance in your macro form and you want us to know that and like just double check macros, we're happy to do that too. Speaking of which, I think everyone but like four people have submitted their macro forms. So if you haven't done that, if you have no clue what I'm talking about, maybe you missed our emails, then just let me know in the group and I will make sure to get those for you. Get those emails sent to you or make sure to like tell you if they were sent and how to locate them because sometimes they'll go to the promotions folder. Um, okay, so very excited. The goal of today's call is really to help provide education on what is building muscle, what is hypertrophy, how does it work, what do we focus on, and then we're going to dive more into the science and the nuance in the weeks to come and help you with strategies as well. But we're going to talk about kind of like new habits that will kick off for week one, our weekly structure with training kind of options there, and break everything down, hopefully, so you feel really confident these next 5 weeks. So, this prep week is really good for kind of laying the foundation. Hopefully, you guys have. Maybe you won't have any questions, and we're like really doing our job. But I would assume you'll have some questions this week. So hopefully, you feel comfortable asking those, and we can have a lot of dialogue this week. So everyone goes into week one next week feeling really good. Okay, so what is hypertrophy? Let me make sure everyone's added here. I think so. Okay, so everyone can see the slide, right? Yes. Okay, great. When we talk about hypertrophy, we're talking about muscle growth. So the process of increasing the size of individual muscle fibers when they're consistently challenged by mechanical tension. We're gonna hear a lot of things on like how to build muscle on social media, with talking to friends, but like really the main driver is going to be the tension that happens when a muscle contracts against resistance, whether that's a barbell, a dumbbell, a cable, or your own body weight. When the load is high enough and your muscle cells sense that tension and respond by turning on protein building pathways that repair and reinforce the fibers, that is what over time allows you to build muscle, which is going to allow for us to build a shape that maybe we weren't genetically blessed with. It's going to help us increase our strength. It's going to help us improve our metabolism. The key point, hypertrophy isn't about like how hard we trained or how sweaty we got or how sore we are. It's about applying enough tension with good form and then recovering properly and repeating that process consistently over time. Um, and this is really important, especially for women in our 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond, because starting around age 30, we naturally lose 3 to 8% of muscle per decade unless we're resistance training. So if we're not doing this, if we're not prioritizing this, then we are going to be losing muscle as we age, which is going to really impact our longevity and our functionality for life. And I don't know about all of you. I would assume this is the case since you're here, but I want to live as long as I can, be functional. And that is so important to me. So I think it's probably important to all of you as well because you're pursuing this, but just to kind of like reinforce that. Um, Building muscle helps to, or sorry, speaking of just kind of like lower muscle on our frames, that's going to mean slower metabolism, poorer glucose control, and weaker bones. So if we're building muscle, then that's going to help reverse that trend. And it's what helps keep our metabolism healthy, our immune system healthy, our joints stable, and our body responsive to future fat loss. We're going to feel a lot better with whatever we're pursuing goals wise if we have enough muscle on our frame. And I think most women are under muscled, not necessarily over body fat, like too much body fat. It's really too little muscle. So in this program, we're not just going to be like, and I think too, this is something to keep in mind and like ditch this mindset of like how many calories we're burning when we're resistance training, because that's really not something that we're focused on when when we're lifting. We're lifting to stimulate adaptation, to create lean tissue um, that's going to support our hormones and our longevity and build the shape that we want, which is okay to aspire to as well. Like building um, a frame that is something that you're excited about from an aesthetic standpoint can be really fun. And then, like, beyond that, increasing our longevity. And something that I am not really talking about in terms of hypertrophy, but there is nothing like lifting heavy weight to increase your confidence and just mental and emotional strength and resilience as well. So, hypertrophy training, which is what we're focused on in this cohort and with HF Physique, is how we build a strong, capable, metabolically resistant body. And also the curves that we were not born with. I certainly wasn't. So I have loved being able to apply hypertrophy training into my life and see the impact it has had on like, I never had glutes my whole life. No matter like what I did, I thought, and so just learning some simple ways of targeting muscle groups and lifting to the intensity needed to elicit that response is so fun to get to do. And it doesn't need to be like killing yourself to do it either. So how we create hypertrophy. In HF Physique, you'll notice we don't just give you one fixed rep target. We give you a rep range, like 8 to 10 reps or 10 to 12 reps, and that's intentional. That range gives you room to auto-regulate, meaning you listen to your body, you can assess how close you are to failure and make like real-time adjustments to your load or your reps. So what that could look like, if the range says 8 to 10 reps and your goal is to finish that set feeling like you have about 1 to 3 reps in reserve, meaning you could do 1 or 2 more clean reps, but not several. That is the goal when you are lifting to build muscle. You want to be near failure, but not at failure, because that's going to really impact your future fatigue, your fatigue levels. And we don't need to train to failure to build muscle, but we need to train near failure to build muscle. So this is something that we can't program for you, right? This is a skill that is really important for you to learn. And we're really excited to help you learn that in this group. If you're brave enough and you want to share your lifting videos with us, we have a small group, there's 40 of us, so it's like we're all here to empower each other. And we'll probably do some sharing too, just to give examples. But if you are willing to share your last set of however many exercises you want to, on the group, we will give you feedback on form. We'll give you feedback on your intensity, which that intensity and also form are what are going to be driving your ability to build muscle. If your first rep looks like your last rep, we're not lifting hard enough. And I think a lot of people like that is the main issue for people that are struggling to build muscle is they're not training at the intensity that they need to. And it's something that is like hard to know how to do. I think I have been a competitive athlete most of my life. And so I've had coaches that have told me like, nope, go again, keep going, don't stop, you've got this. And so I like intuitively, I know I can feel that so well. And I think most of us don't, we just can't feel that. Like we haven't all had coaches that are helping us with that. And so even though we're virtual, it's a little bit intimidating to like set up your camera at the gym, but just try it for this 5 weeks. Like set up your little, bring a little mini tripod. You can like get a cheap tripod online. This is a nice camera, but you can get a cheap one and put your phone on it and just set it to the side and just on your last set, film it, and we will give you feedback and we will be so excited to do that because that's huge. So, okay, back to this, but just wanted to plug you guys giving us videos because that will only benefit you and it will also benefit the group. Like if you're too scared to submit a video, but you're seeing other people's videos and you're reading our feedback, that'll be helpful for you when you go into your next training session too, to kind of like understand what the goal is. So, um, so how to apply this, right? So if you get to 10, let's say the goal is 8 to 10 reps. If you get to 10 reps and still feel like you had more in the tank, that's a sign that the weight is too light, right? You're on the high end of the rep range and you felt like you could do more. So that's why we typically will have like a warm-up set. So increase the load on your next set. And then if you hit 8 reps, and you're already right at that 1 to 2 reps in reserve mark, that's perfect. Stay there. If you can barely get 6 to 7 reps with good form, then that's too heavy. Decrease slightly on the next round. So this is what we call auto-regulating our effort, and it teaches you to train intelligently instead of just blindly following numbers. The same applies week to week. So if you finish your hip thrust, let's say it's 8 to 10 reps, you finish at 9 reps, the weight feels like heavy. You feel like you only have maybe 1 to 3 reps in reserve. The next week, I would probably, if it were me, I would do my warm up set at the weight I finished last week and see how that feels. If I can get to 10 reps and it feels like I have like maybe 4 reps in reserve, I'll increase the weight for my next set and try to be on the low, like increase it enough that it puts me on the low end of that rep range. And then maybe I get 8 reps. And then on my last set, I'm like grinding it out to try to get to 9 reps, right? Or just to match and get at 8 again. So just paying attention, like setting your phone aside and paying attention when you're lifting, like how does this feel? Like how many reps in reserve do I have here? And okay, I want to adjust on before I go to my next set, or I'm gonna make a note just in my phone so that next week when I start my workout, I know like, ooh, I went too light last week. I'm gonna start heavier. So something to think about. That's very important. The same idea, and then if the weight feels easier over time, which is what we are probably what's probably you'll probably be experiencing, then you've adapted. So now to keep the same level of tension week to week, you'll increase your load slightly or you'll push toward that top end of your rep range. That is how true progression happens, not by just kind of guessing or showing up or like lifting. Oh, last week I did 20 pounds, I'll do 20 pounds again. But by listening to your body and applying that feedback to your next set or your next week. This approach also helps protect you from burnout or under recovery because you're adjusting for daily fatigue, sleep, and stress. So this is important too. So maybe last week you lifted 50 pounds and this week you didn't get sleep. Like your baby was up all night, you had high work stress, or you're on your period and you were at late games with your kids, you're feeling a little bit sick. Like maybe you get to the 50 pounds, you start with 50 pounds and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a 10 out of 10. I am like hitting failure. I'm really struggling today. It's an opportunity to pay attention and adjust for that day too. Like give yourself the freedom, detach a little bit from the reps and the load and pay attention to how you're feeling, what your current biofeedback is, and hit the stimulus for that day according to that. Um, because you're not going to feel 100% every day, and that's okay. So don't get upset with yourself if you're not like progressively overloading every single week, every single exercise. That's just not realistic. It's not going to be linear. But if you get one more rep or 5 more pounds on one set, like we're looking at the overall volume of the day, then that is what we want to increase that overall volume. So that's probably not going to be across all sets, all exercises. Um, and our goal is to hit that effort level. So when you train this way, every set just becomes data and your body gives you information and you respond. And that's how we're going to build strength, which is going to allow us to build muscle. So I talked a little bit about this, but how to know if you're actually training in that 1 to 3 reps in reserve range, the sweet spot where growth happens. Here's what to look for. The last couple of reps in your set should feel noticeably harder, but you're still in control. You're focused, breathing heavier, your rep speed naturally slows a little bit. You could maybe do 1 or 2 more reps, maybe 3, but not several. And that's your body signaling you've reached enough tension to stimulate growth. And I wanted to, in this, kind of clear up a few common myths that I often hear women saying, and I myself am even guilty of thinking this way sometimes, um, because it's just hard not to. But the burn, okay, so myth number one, the burn means I'm building muscle. Like maybe you're in a Pilates class, right? And it's just like really burning and you're like, oh, hell yeah, I am building muscle right now. That I want to talk a little bit about that. So that burning sensation you feel mid-set or when you're doing maybe really high light reps, um, is caused by metabolite buildup. So lactic acid, hydrogen ions, etc. And it can accompany hypertrophy. It can accompany hypertrophy, but it doesn't cause it. So you might be like, on a hip thrust and you have like 2 reps left and you're grinding it out and you also feel that burn, like that could accompany hypertrophy, but you could also be doing some little pulse body weight glute bridges and feeling a good burn. And that doesn't mean you're building big, strong glutes. You could also be like feeling a burn when you're running, and that doesn't mean you're building muscle in your legs. So it could accompany hypertrophy, but it's not a driver. Um, if the load isn't heavy enough and you're far from failure, the burn is just like fatigue, right? We're feeling fatigue, not growth. And myth number 2 is if I'm not sore, I didn't train hard enough. And I think this is one I'll talk a little bit about it. So soreness comes mostly from muscle damage, not from growth itself. So when you start a new movement or train through a new range of motion, you'll get sore. But as your body adapts, that soreness decreases even while progress continues. So soreness is a sign of novelty, not effectiveness. The one time where I will pay attention to soreness is if I'm doing a new training program or a new exercise and I'm noticing um like I'm trying a new exercise, I'm noticing the next day my glutes are sore and it's a glute specific exercise. I'm like, okay, that's good. Like that, we are working the muscles we want to work here. Great. But if I continue to do that exercise and I'm pushing heavier week to week and I'm 7 weeks in and I'm not feeling sore, that's not because it doesn't mean I'm not building muscle. It just means my body is continuing to adapt it's actually a good sign. If you're constantly sore all the time, something is probably wrong and we need to look into that. Myth number 3, sweat or exhaustion equals results. We have a lot of time, like we've had a lot of women that have come into maybe this style of training and they're used to like very high intensity training and they feel like they're not doing enough. Because they're not sweating, they're not laying on the floor exhausted at the end of their session. It just feels like, did I even do anything? And maybe that's something we look at, right? Like maybe they're not pushing that 1 to 3 reps in reserve, but also you can have a very effective training session and not be completely exhausted or covered in sweat. Sweat is simply your body cooling itself, not an indicator of intensity or tension. And you can sweat a lot and build nothing if you never get close to failure. and you're not using resistance. So hypertrophy training is about quality of effort, not how tired you are when you're done. So if we kind of strip away those myths, and another one would be like the amount of calories I burn when I'm training means I'm like doing a great job, right? So if we can kind of detach from those as equating to a good quality session, we're going to be better off and just focusing on reps in reserve and form and pushing ourselves. And also in between sets, like getting adequate rest. So talking a little bit about this, where growth actually happens, recovery and nutrition. This is one of the most important truths in training and something that we're going to talk a lot about in this cohort. Why we're including macronutrients, why we're incorporating habits for recovery. Because your workouts are the signal for growth, but recovery is where the actual muscle building happens. So when you lift, you create small amounts of tension and breakdown in the muscle, and the rebuilding process, protein synthesis, happens in the hours and days after training when your body is resting, fueled, and recovering. So, what that means and what that requires is number one, sleep. And I probably should have put this habit very first. We're not starting the cohort with like focusing on sleep. But if you feel like you can start that right now, like go ahead and get a kickstart on your sleep and your sleep hygiene because sleep is going to be your number one recovery tool when it comes to building muscle during deep sleep growth hormone peaks. And if we're going growth hormone peaks in the kind of early hours of sleeping, so if we're going to bed really late every night, we're missing that huge surge of growth hormone. Even if we're getting 7 hours of sleep, if we're going to bed after midnight, like we're missing out on that. So getting to bed around 10-ish is going to be optimal for growth hormone as well. And then muscle repair accelerates when we're getting good sleep, and our nervous system and stress resets. So those are huge. So aiming for 7 to 9 hours per night, and ideally a consistent bedtime, even one night of short sleep can reduce protein synthesis by 20 to 30% and impair insulin sensitivity. Two things we're really wanting to improve in this cohort. Oh, Casey, I thought you had your hand raised like a question. Okay. Okay. And then second, protein. So talking nutrition, protein is the raw material for growth. You can train perfectly and still stall if you're not eating enough protein. And it doesn't need to be 200 grams per pound of body weight. Really, I like to suggest zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight per day, but even as low as zero point 0.7, research shows is enough to stimulate growth. And muscle repair requires amino acids, especially leucine, to trigger mTOR activation, which essentially, like in layman terms, allows for us to effectively build muscle. So getting that zero point 0.8, zero point 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. I would suggest starting with the lower end if you have never prioritized your protein and like gently encouraging that up each week. Or if you're like, I'm already focused on my protein, I'm going to just go up on the upper end of that. That's great. If you feel good, then I love that. Um, Important thing on protein, ideally, is to spread those meals throughout the day. So, like 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. That frequency is going to help allow for more optimal hypertrophy, essentially. And next up would be energy availability. So, if calories are too low for too long, your body does not have enough energy to build new tissue. We need to stay ideally closer to maintenance. Um, there is research showing that we can definitely build muscle even in an ultra low caloric state, but I wouldn't say that that's optimal, especially if stress is high. For most of us, it is. So that's not to say you can't build muscle in a calorie deficit, but it is going to be harder. So in this cohort, we kind of just want to put you in the most optimal place to build muscle, and that's going to be at maintenance. If you still really want to prioritize fat loss as well, like we could move to the low end of maintenance. Um, if you feel like you have a really hard time building muscle, and then I would definitely suggest looking at your training output, right? But maybe throughout the day, you're actually a lot more active than you realize. And we want to bring calorie intake up a little bit. So you're more on the high end of maintenance. So those are things to consider and things that I want you to pay attention to throughout the cohort, and we can make adjustments as well. Managing stress. Stress and cortisol management. High chronic cortisol from work or poor sleep or overtraining directly interfere with muscle protein synthesis and increases muscle breakdown, puts us in a more catabolic state. We want to be as anabolic building as possible. This is why rest days are not optional. They're part of the training plan. So walking, mobility, light movement on rest days is great. It helps keep blood flow, supports recovery without adding stress. But rest is really important. So we don't want you guys lifting 6 days a week. That's not going to allow for you to build muscle. Most of us, 3 to 4 days is optimal. Some of us, maybe 4 to 5 days. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too. So next slide. The split for optimal muscle growth. Okay, so with HF Physique, we have some different options here for training splits because we want this to be optimal for hypertrophy, but also optimal for our clients' lives. And so we try to build options around both. So there would be like the 4 to 5 day split or the 3 to 4 day split, which I have here on the screen. Hopefully you guys can see those. Both splits are built to drive results. The difference is going to be in total training volume and recovery capacity. So let's talk about like what that actually means in practice. So option one would be the 4 day upper lower split with an optional glute day. And that's what you see in HF Physique right now. Next week, we are adding our 3 day week full body split. So I'm going to talk about that as well, because I think that's probably going to be the best option for most people, honestly. So the the 4 day split, upper lower, so you'll hit upper body twice, lower body twice, and then maybe add in either the optional glute day if you want more glute emphasis, or the optional husband day if you want more upper body emphasis. And those are both on Saturdays. So this setup trains each muscle group twice per week or 3 times if you're doing that optional day, allowing for around 15 to 20 working sets per muscle group. And it's the kind of the sweet spot where research shows is most effective for hypertrophy when recovery is managed. It gives you more total volume than the 3 day a week option, obviously. A little bit more opportunity for isolation work and the flexibility to emphasize like lagging muscle groups. We're just getting more volume. The upside, more muscle building potential if you can support it with good nutrition, sleep, and recovery. The trade-off, it's going to be a bigger overall stress load. And so recovery and stress management are a non-negotiable. And also, like, you may not need this much volume. I don't lift with this much volume, but also I pretty much do the 3 day split. Um, Let me think here. I pretty much for me right now, I'm just wanting to maintain muscle. So I'm a little different case because I'm doing high rocks training. Um, but just on maintaining muscle, I just lift 2 days a week, pretty much 2 full body days twice a week. That's enough for me to maintain. And that means I have to bring intensity when I do train. But the 3 day full body split, plus maybe adding that optional day to like bring up lagging areas, whether it's lower body or upper body, is what probably most women would benefit from doing or starting with and tracking progress, because with all things we want to apply the minimal dose for effectiveness, right? um and that comes with nutrition as well. What's the least amount of work we can do to see results? Unless you just love training, but I think a lot of women think they love training and they're just scared to not train. So consider that as well. As someone that's like lifted my whole life and I love training, I think that's important to recognize too, especially as our lives are, we're most of us are midlife. Like we have a lot of things we need to do, whether that's supporting our children, showing up at work, supporting our parents, supporting our partners, um, taking care of ourselves. And that doesn't mean lifting 6 days a week, like all the time. Like maybe that means going for a walk. Maybe that means having a little bit of downtime, if that's even possible. So give yourself, be curious and give yourself the flexibility of like, if I lifted less volume, would I be able to bring more intensity to my training and have better recovery and feel better and lower my inflammation? Like that is something to consider as well. And I know this is a muscle building cohort, but I'm here to tell you that more isn't always better. So Option two would be the 3 day full body split and then maybe an optional fourth, like more focused day. So this structure hits all major muscle groups in each session, giving you 2 to 3 times per week that you're stimulating muscle growth with fewer total workouts. So this is going to be efficient and sustainable, especially for busy women or those newer to structured lifting. The upside would be it's going to be easier to recover from and maintain long-term consistency because there's just more flexibility. You can kind of move days around if needed. The trade-off, because total weekly set volume is lower, closer to 9 to 12 sets per muscle, hypertrophy potential is slightly reduced compared to a higher volume 4 day split, especially for a more trained female. But that doesn't mean it isn't optimal for you. So I think if you're new to resistance training, I would definitely start with the 3 day split next week, and see how you feel. Give that like 2 to 3 weeks, and then you can always add more volume. It's so much easier to increase volume than to get hurt or be under recovered and have to decrease. Because instead of like 1 step forward, it's usually like 3 steps back. So keep that in mind. If you can confidently recover from 4+ training days a week, the upper lower split is going to provide a little bit more stimulus, total stimulus, and long-term growth potential. Um, but if recovery, stress, or your schedule are limiting factors, the 3 day full body split is going to be a great option too. And like I said, the goal isn't to just like train more, it's to train enough to create a consistent, recoverable stimulus that fits into your life. Because if you decide to train 5 days a week and that doesn't work and it's like all or nothing, then that's not helpful either. So, talking about a couple more slides here, just setting expectations and goals. So obviously this is a 5 week cohort. We'll have an option to extend, but we're not going to be building like an insane life-changing amount of muscle in a month, right? The goal of this cohort is to set you up and give you all the resources and tools you need so that you can continue building muscle for as long as you choose to do. For women, gaining about a half of a pound to 1 pound of muscle per month is a realistic goal. So that doesn't sound like a lot, right? But over a year, it adds up to major changes in strength, metabolism, and our physique. Um, Obviously, age, genetics, training experience, sleep, stress, and nutrition are all going to affect the rate of growth. So, women in our 30s and 40s and 50s can absolutely build muscle, but more recovery and being more intentional with fueling are going to become more important for us as estrogen and just anabolic signaling naturally decline with age. So that's why we are really focused on all these things that are going to help us optimize, because it is a little different than when I was 20. I could go into the gym on very low sleep, poor nutrition, and like still see pretty dang good results because hormones were working in my favor. Now I have to be more intentional with those things, especially recovery. So, another piece, beginners, you're going to see faster results at first due to neuromuscular adaptation. So your brain is going to be learning to recruit more fibers, which is really exciting. It's called like newbie gains, and it's so fun for us when clients are new. So if that's you, prioritizing form first is going to be really important. We want that intensity there, but not at the risk of form. So keep that in mind too. If you're newer, we really want to set you up so that you can lift heavy long term. So form is going to be especially important, and we would love to watch videos of you lifting so that we can give you feedback on form. So please share those. And hypertrophy is a very slow adaptation process, not something that's going to happen in 30 days, but consistency is going to beat perfection. You don't need to be perfect to build muscle. You just need to be consistently showing up and providing that stimulus for your body. So if you miss a workout or you enjoy a night out or you're sick or you're traveling, it's not going to erase your progress. What matters most is just moving the needle in the direction you want it to go, and that trend line continuing to increase over time. So showing up, lifting with intent, fueling consistently week after week. Um, Research consistently shows that adherence is the number one predictor of long-term progress. So we would much rather you had a moderate plan that you could stick to than like a really intense one that's not going to last. And then visual changes are going to take time. For most women, it takes about 3 to 6 months of consistent progressive training to see visible muscle definition and body recomposition. So keep that in mind. You're going to feel the changes before you see them. So hopefully during this cohort, you'll notice a lot of biofeedback improvements. So more energy, more strength, more stability, hopefully numbers increasing as you lift each week. And then often like other people will probably notice before you do. Um, but visible muscle gain can also be masked by small increases of glycogen, water, or fat. So the mirror isn't always like the best indicator of progress. I want you guys to really focus on how your body performs and feels during this cohort. Track performance, not just visual change. So building muscle isn't about like I mean, over time, you're going to see a big aesthetic difference by building muscle. But in those week to week moments, like that's probably not going to show up as much. So, focusing on PRs, your ability to lift heavier, do more reps, or move with better control, those markers are going to show that your body's adapting, even if the visual changes are slower. And I think this mindset is also really protective for your motivation because you're always improving something that's measurable. And then also avoiding comparison and trusting the process. Progress in hypertrophy is going to be really individual. So comparing your pace or your physique to others is only going to distract you from your own personal data. So look at your data, look at your lifts each week, look at your performance, assess your biofeedback. Those are all going to be the measures of success for you. Because every woman's like hormone profile, training history, lifestyle, mental load are all very different. So just staying focused on consistently showing up, and that's going to compound over time. So I think I saw a couple of questions. Let me just make sure. Do both options have the 30 and 60-minute options? Yes. Is it better to do 3 days at 60 or 4 days at 30? I I would probably just try. I would probably do the 3 days at 60, Melissa, to start. But both do have that option. So see how you feel. Do the 3 days at 60. If that feels like too much volume in like individual sessions, I think it won't because you're going to be doing a combination of upper and lower exercises. Where if you're doing the 30 minutes, you're going to be, I mean, it's going to be like about the same volume in each session, but I would probably do the 60-minute 3 day. And then you have the flexibility. Like if you want to add an optional day for and do the 30-minute on your fourth day, then you could totally do that. So the difference between muscle growth and strength, they're kind of correlated with each other. If you're increasing, so muscle growth happens from training near failure in that 1 to 3 rep range, and it can happen at a variety of rep ranges from like 5 to 30 reps. Strength is going to be usually in that lower rep range. And you could be building strength and not building muscle, visible like hypertrophy. So you could be lifting like 3 sets of 3, right? And this would be maybe like a strongman athlete or a power lifter. They're building strength, um, but visible hypertrophy, visible muscle size might not be happening. Usually the two are correlated. So if we're lifting near failure and we're lifting a little bit more in that hypertrophy range, then we're going to be prioritizing muscle growth, and that's harder to see week to week. So by focusing on increasing over time, like progressively overloading week to week, we know like, okay, we're increasing in strength, we're also lifting near failure, then that's going to probably correlate to us building muscle. So that's kind of how we prioritize both. Would you guys add anything on that? Or how we look at both, compare both? I think you're muted, Marita.
I don't think I have anything to add, but that is like a very, because like you said, like you can or you can build muscle in very low calories. It's about your time under tension, your tempo. Um,
Yeah,
I
and
don't think
something
I have
that
anything to add. I really don't. I
Also,
just
your
started talking
training
to myself.
experience, like
yes.
that's gonna matter a lot. Like if you're a
Yeah.
beginner, like beginner gains are a real thing, and there is less impact from how long, how intense you train. Um,
Yeah, totally.
so
One thing
love
too,
them while they last.
yeah. Um, Julie, having dumbbells and bands would be great. I would probably bring like a lighter set of dumbbells, like in that 10 to 15 range for upper body, and then something heavier, like 30 to 40 for lower body. And just know you might need to adjust your reps. So kind of disregard the rep range. If it's like 8 to 12 and you're like, okay, I have quite a few reps left, then just keep going until you get to that 1 to 3 reps in reserve, and track that. And one thing I was going to say, which is interesting on the research, so time under tension matters if you're lifting with enough resistance, um, that it matters, right? So, like, I might be lifting for 3 minutes time under tension, but if I'm not lifting at that high end of the resistance for my body, then it isn't a measure of hypertrophy. So that is something that's interesting too, because it matters when we're lifting heavy enough to stimulate that. So does that make sense? Did I explain that well? So that is like important, but uh, but only when we are lifting heavy enough for it to matter, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, um, okay, let's talk about habits. So week one habits. Our goal is for you to hit within 10% of your protein and calories each week. That is going to allow for consistency, but not like perfection. Um, and doing that every day. So if you're eating 120 grams of protein, being within 12 grams above or below that. If your calorie goal is 2000 calories, being within 200 calories above or below that. If you want to be even like more dialed in and you feel like you can handle it, then being within 100 calories above or below your goal, I think is really great as well. Um, so protein provides the building blocks, amino acids for muscle repair, and calories provide enough energy for adaptation and recovery. So hitting your targets within about 10% of your goals is going to help you just feel very realistic. And then on the next habit, completing 3 hypertrophy-based workouts. Obviously, like if you're doing HF Physique, that is great because we know what you're doing. And I know it's designed for hypertrophy, but if it's another resistance training program, that's okay too. But lifting is the stimulus for growth. So to build muscle, I think getting at least those 3 structured resistance training sessions per week, that's enough to hit each major muscle group 2 to 3 times a week, with allowing for recovery days as well. And and then talking about our week one habit focus. So we will add these habits to your dashboard for week one. Hydration is going to be the number one. So getting in 100 ounces of water a day, hydration is going to directly impact both performance and recovery. Even mild dehydration can reduce our strength, endurance, and focus. And we really want that when we are lifting. It also can help transport nutrients, remove waste, and prevent cramping. So if you're lifting heavier and you're underhydrated, you're probably going to get some muscle cramps. So paying attention to hydration status, maybe adding in electrolytes if you feel like you need those. I love electrolytes and I notice a big difference in my training and recovery when I add those in. So aiming for about 100 ounces of water per day. Um, More if you feel good having more. But just kind of having like steady hydration throughout the day, not just trying to do that all at once. And then some little bonus habits that if you aren't doing these things, to consider them. It's not like you have to do these habits. Water is priority number one, but some kind of bonus supplements. Marita's going to deep dive a little bit more into supplements next week. But some supplements I recommend for all women, especially those that want to build muscle, is daily creatine supplementation. Creatine is one of the most research and proven supplements for women that lift. So it's going to increase our muscles' phosphocreatine stores, basically giving you immediate energy for high intensity training. Also, more current research shows like huge cognitive benefits. So I tell women, even if you're not lifting weights, like you're going to benefit from creatine supplementation, from just your brain having more energy. So I I that's like a non-negotiable for me. For some people that feels overwhelming, so hopefully we can kind of destigmatize that, but just taking 3 to 5 grams daily, any time of day that you can consistently take it. The impact is when your blood is saturated, so not like it's not like a pre-workout where you're noticing it the day of. It's going to be like a couple weeks in. You might notice a little bit of water retention initially. That's not something I typically notice, but some women are really sensitive to that. So just know that will level off. And if you're underhydrated, you're going to notice that more. So drinking water is going to help with that as well. And it will help you a little bit, like with your lifting. I always tell people, like, maybe you'll get one more rep in each set, but that is helpful for sure with lifting heavier, more intensity, being able to recover faster and build lean tissue more efficiently. And it's also safe and effective, especially valuable as we age, helping to preserve muscle, bone density, and cognitive health. So if you're like so overwhelmed by creatine, ask us questions in the group and we're happy to help and give some suggestions. Cheap creatine, micronized creatine monohydrate is all you need. Unflavored. I just mix it in with some electrolytes in my water bottle in the morning and I'm good to go. And then omega 3s. So fish oil or fatty fish, omega 3 fatty acids from fish oil or foods like salmon are going to help regulate inflammation and support muscle repair. These have been shown to enhance muscle protein synthesis and improve recovery. We do not want to be constantly inflamed. So omega 3s are going to be very helpful. They also support joint health and heart health, which means you'll feel better training long term. So if you don't eat fatty fish a few times a week, aiming for maybe a daily fish oil supplement with a combined EPA and DHA of around 2 grams is going to be ideal. But I would love to see us trying out like 2 to 3 times a week, getting in a serving of fatty fish. And I'll share some of my favorites in week one with you guys as well, to hopefully kind of help with like some ideas. So, any questions from anyone? Any questions that maybe we haven't answered? How are we
There's one
feeling?
in the chat, Michaela, just about programming.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll stop screen sharing so I can see it a little bit better. Where do we find the workouts? The HF app. Okay, so you have to sign up for them for the HF app. We did do a goddess discount, so you can get them for free for this month. So if you go to hungryfitness.co, then you can just sorry, I have something on my keyboard. You can do goddess at checkout. Let me pull it up so I could just and you can sign up for HF Physique, and then they'll be loaded to your dashboard. So you'll see them right in the app with the groups. They'll be on your dashboard. So I'll share that here. And then the discount code is Goddess. Any other questions for anyone? We're so excited. If you haven't filled out the macro form, do that ASAP. We'll get those loaded for you so you're ready to go for week one. And my hope is everybody shares at least like a couple videos next week so we can be giving you guys coaching in the group. This is a safe space and we're all here to learn from each other and grow. Mentally, but also like physically. We're trying to grow physically here. So, something else that I'll mention too is if we're building muscle, like that's going to weigh more. So, as you're looking at metrics, I would love for you to take photos, weigh yourself, and also take measurements. I love to do smallest point of my waist, largest point of my glutes, largest point of my legs, and then largest point of my arms. Those are like some good measurements to have on hand. For me personally, I'm forever trying to grow my glutes. So when I'm assessing progress, I'm looking at my waist measurement and my glute measurement. So if you only want to do two, if you're like me and you're like, I'm just trying to grow my glutes, that's fine. But whatever kind of area you're really focused on, I would for sure measure that. And if you can take measurements every week, that's going to help reduce error. Like if you're just taking measurements once a month, like you might not be hitting the largest point of your glutes, or you might not be exact on so it's kind of like might confuse your results here. So if you're taking, the more measurements you take, the more accurate they're going to be, just because we have more data points, right? So I like once a week. I think that's a good, and then photos maybe every 2 weeks. Maybe you have a pair of jeans you want to have, and you can kind of assess like, oh, I'm filling out the butt of these jeans a little bit better. Like I'm noticing the legs of them are getting a little tighter. Like I'm building muscle here. Or if you're recomping, you might not your jean like how you fill out your jeans might not change a lot, but you're noticing a lot of difference in photos, right? Measurements might not change a lot, but you're noticing difference in photos. You're noticing like how your body feels. It feels like tighter and firmer. So those are all ways to kind of assess progress. If you notice the scale is increasing week to week, obviously like the first week or two, give it a second because we're probably going to have more glycogen in our muscles. We're going to have more water. Um, and so, and also if we're taking creatine and we haven't been, and we're lifting and that's new, like there's a lot of things that are going to increase the scale for the first 1 to 2 weeks. Don't stress over that. Give it at least 2 weeks. That's probably going to come down and like re-regulate. So that's one thing to keep in mind. We're applying a lot of new stimuli this first month, and a lot of those are going to bring the scale up for some of us. If we're new to lifting, it's a new training cycle. We're going to be a little bit more inflamed. That's going to cause water retention. If we're just drinking more, we're going to have just more water in our body. That's going to impact the scale potentially. And hopefully we're fueling and we're getting enough carbohydrates. So we're not glycogen depleted. Maybe we were prior though. So keep that all in mind. And don't stress if the scale comes up. Take measurements, give it a couple of weeks, and then we'll make adjustments if we need to. But maybe you aren't as active as you thought you were, and you're noticing the scale coming up like in week 3 still, then we can make some adjustments there too. So, but also the scale is going to come up a little bit if we're building muscle. And so don't like detach yourself from that emotionally and just know a more muscular body is probably going to be a heavier body. And that is a great thing. Like that's not something to be afraid of. We can always do a future calorie deficit if you're feeling like you're also putting on unwanted body fat. So keep that in mind. And detach from needing to weigh a certain amount for you to have the body and the strength and the health and longevity that you want. And take measurements, take photos, pay attention to your biofeedback. All of those things are going to play in, and be patient too. Like we can give it 6 months and assess and like see how we feel. We don't have to be like, oh no, look, I'm weighing heavier. I'm going to just like totally change the plan. Okay. This is an opportunity to get curious and get excited about doing something differently if you've been dieting your whole life. So we're so excited to get to work with you. We have Coach Casey and Coach Marita here, and so we will be in the groups. And do you guys want to say anything about yourselves or about the group?
I'm super excited to do this. It's always fun to kind of mix it up. We do a lot of focus on fat loss and understandably so with our clients. Um, but at the end of the day, it's the muscle is where it's at, right? 98% of my clients to get the muscle, or sorry, to get the body that they want aesthetically is going to require them to put on muscle. Um, so yeah, pat yourself on the back for being here, and I'm super excited to help you along the way.
I second all of that. I'm excited to help kind of like break those myths, like you had said, like the Pilates is not where we build the body. Like it's, and we're golf balls, not tennis balls. We want to be tight, compact, dense, and heavy, and not just light and airy. So I'm excited to be here. This is like my favorite. I love building muscle. It's my favorite thing.
Yay! Well, thank you, ladies. We're so excited to also get to know all of you more. So thanks for sharing. I have been going through and like reading some of your intros and loving it.
Sure.
So keep sharing. The more we get to know you and your own like personal roadblocks and lives and your goals, the better we can coach you over the next 5 weeks. So let us know if you have any questions, and we will see you in the groups. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.